Glad that you're watching. Some of you have been on this series with me. We're looking at the little or abbreviated Apocalypse from the book of Isaiah, chapter 24 through 27. We're trying to get our way out of 24, but I've really taken time to answer the question, the justice of God. Is he fair or right to send this tribulation upon the world? And why is he doing it? If you've been watching, you'll understand there's always this accusation that somehow God is not love, that he's not just, that he's unfair, that he's mean or overbearing and cruel. And he is not, but hopefully from these tapes, watching, you'll begin to see his heart, his passion to keep people out of hell and see them in heaven in his likeness forever and ever. And the tribulation is all about him accomplishing that, from whomsoever will believe. Now, we've been looking at Babylon in our third taping of this series. We're going to continue doing that, and we said that Isaiah speaks about God destroying, in chapter 24, a city of confusion. We believe that's Babylon. And then in chapter 13 of Isaiah, he also says, Babylon is going to be cut off like Sodom and Gomorrah, suddenly, utterly, completely. We see it in the book of Revelation. Suddenly there's a Babylon again and its destruction. So I'm now finishing up with this. Revelation 18:9. The kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her will weep and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning. The city is going to burn to the ground. Standing at a distance for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. So, this is a fascinating thing. To see there'll be a time where Babylon is, in Iraq. It is going to be rebuilt at some point. On the Euphrates River or next to it. And it's going to be the capital of the world. The Antichrist will rule and reign from there. Actually, he will not be in the city when it's destroyed. He'll be leading the troops trying to destroy the Jews. Well, that's another story. But the city is going to go up in smoke. And it's going to go up suddenly, just as Isaiah promised it would. Now, then the scriptures generalize here. In Isaiah 24:13, what was true for Babylon is going to be true of the earth. It says, when it shall be thus in the midst of the land among the people, it will be like the shaking of an olive tree, like the gleaning of grapes when the vintage is done. When you pick the grapes, there's not much left. And that's what he's saying. Very little is going to be left on the earth after this judgment. And so what's true of Babylon will be true of the whole earth. It will be desolate with very little of anything valuable left in it that is not destroyed. Now, when God is emphasizing something, he's emphasizing this, he uses several methods often to do it. So we're going to look at one, this confusion, what the word means in the Hebrew. I caught this in the New American Commentary, and then I realized all the commentators talk about it. The word for confusion here in Isaiah 24:10 is the same word used, translated as formless, and then empty, the next word after formless, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. So when it says the earth was formless and empty, that's the same word, that formless confusion. I actually tried to get the correct pronunciation of this. I believe it would be pronounced tuhu. But this tuhu means that, literally, it will be a wasteland. So he calls it the city of desolation, the city of waste. It translates sometimes as chaos, as like not existing, like being completely wiped out. And so, like the planet before God did the creation week on it, which is interesting, because during the millennial reign, he's going to have to bring the planet back to life that he's destroyed. So it'll be a little bit like the 6-day creation week, where a dead planet the planet's going to be dead again, or almost dead, and he's going to bring it back to life. We don't get a lot of detail on that, but it's going to happen. Some of you who've read on Ezekiel and in the end of Revelation, you begin to, the last chapter in the Bible, I think 22, you see the finale of this, after the millennial reign, the eternal state, how completely he's brought this dead planet back to life. And I believe he's done this more than once in history, or eternal history, if you will. So, we find in Genesis 1:2, it says it's, empty and how I say, it's in the Hebrew, it's tuhu and buhu. Sounds funny, but it's a rhyming, these two words rhyme. And it's the idea, it is empty and it is waste, or waste and empty. So he's using perhaps the strongest word he could use here, a word that Hebrews, if you know anything about Hebrew Bible, you know what it says in Genesis 1:2. The condition of the earth was a wasteland, it was chaotic, it was lifeless before the six-day creation. That's what it's going to be like. That's how he's comparing it. Some of the words I've put in red here as the commentators define it. It refers to an unproductive, uninhabited land that has a sense of futility and non-existence. I guess you would just say a total wipeout, a total loss. And several translations do it. Young's literal translation does a nice job. It calls it, the earth has existed waste and void in Genesis 1:2. So, the city of confusion is going to be waste, and really void, if you will. And then I looked into a Hebrew interlinear Bible online, and it translates, the earth becomes chaos and vacancy. That's what we're looking to happen to this Babylon. And just to drive it home here, the Septuagint, which would be 200 years before Christ, taking the Hebrew scriptures and translating them to Greek, they sent 72 men to Alexandria, Egypt, to do this translating, Jews. And I think they took the same number each tribe. I think it's 6, and they're converted 7. Anyways, it comes up to 72. I should be doing my ad, but I don't think too well when I'm preaching sometimes. You see, funny, with the numbers, I got to write them down, or I don't get them. But anyways, you copy the glitch here. My brain not working. So, but what does it say in the Septuagint? This is how the Jews understood it. They're translating in Greek, they're trying to get the Hebrew meaning. The Greek, it said, the earth was unsightly and unfinished. Babylon, in chapter 24 of Isaiah, is unsightly, a wasteland, a chaos. And that's what he's trying to convey. And last one, I took a second word-for-word translation here from the Lexham Hebrew English Interlinear Bible. Empty wasteland be in the earth. That's Babylon, and that will be like that all over the planet. It's a throwback, if you will, to Genesis 1:2. It's going to need to be recreated again. So, Tuhu Wabohu, in the same sense in Genesis 1, characterizing the earth as uninhabitable, inhospitable to human life. This is amazing destruction. And there is, now you're looking at the actual, I think it's the Strong's I have in front of me, confusion as it's defined, and it means formless, confusion. It represents chaos, confusion, disorder, all things that are opposed to the organization, direction, and order that God has demonstrated. He's going to disorder the planet. You want to say it that way. Now, the shocker. In the middle of all this destruction, you don't expect to hear the praises of God and joy, but it's going to happen. And this is the strangest thing about the Great Tribulation. People who would never come to Christ in this crisis, they will come. So Isaiah doesn't quite understand. He hasn't, the book of Revelation hasn't been written yet, but he foresees the praises welling up all over the planet. So in Isaiah chapter 24, verses 14 through 16, we see this. And I took a quote from Dickens here. We like to speak about it being the best of times and the worst of times. But when people are millions are being destroyed by plagues and hail and fire and disease and war, and yet millions, tens of millions, I believe hundreds of millions, are gloriously being saved and praising God. That is the best of times and the worst of times. The time we live in today, I understand how this is true of each time in its sense. For instance, I know some of you have lamented the fact that we have so many people who are addicted to staring at screens and iPhones and this kind of stuff. But for me, some of you don't know this, but I have no hearing I can't hear anything, understand any language in my left ear. And I have somewhere between 10 and 15% of my hearing left in my right ear. Thank God for a thing called a digital hearing aid. I will go around and I talk with people and every so often I have to ask what they say, but without that, I would be very non-functional. To me, this is the best of days. I love this technology. It's made me able to hear. But to someone who's, addicted to Facebook and spend hours, looking at things on a screen and can't seem to function without this thing in front of them, it's the worst of times. It's a blessing, it's a curse. And our technology is like that. I've been in meetings where people are recovering from porn addiction because it's so easy to get on all the different screens we have. And yet other people are this technology has opened up all kinds of great study and learning and been such a blessing. But this tribulation period, what Dickens said hundreds of years ago, is going to be, it will be the best of times for the millions and millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions coming to Christ, and the worst of times is acting like Hitler but worldwide. The Antichrist and the false prophet are going to try to systematically destroy, murder, kill everyone who will not pledge allegiance to hell and the devil and their wickedness. Interesting, terrifying, glorious all at the same time. So let's look at it. By the way, people only read the best of times, the worst of times. Look what Dickens said. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. Does that sound like our age? We have more knowledge than we've ever had before, and more people seem to be doing stupid things, foolish things, than ever before, at the same time. The age of wisdom, the age of foolishness. Dickens understood something about mankind. It was the epoch of belief, and it was the epoch of incredulity. I have trouble saying that word, admittedly. But, great faith and great stupidity in what people fall for. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness, it was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. This will be true of the tribulation, the Great Tribulation. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. We were going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. This is the tribulation. It's a fascinating quote. How true it will be of that age. Now, let's look at it in Isaiah's words. 24:14 through 16. Remember, this is like hell on earth. This is really going on. This is terrifying. There are plagues. People are dying. There's a terrible, totalitarian regime demanding worship of a wicked man. Yet, it says, they shall lift up their voice, they shall sing. For the majesty of the Lord, they shall cry aloud from the sea. Now, if you're in Israel, we think of, Americans think of from sea to shiny sea. That's the Atlantic and the Pacific. But to the Jews, if you're sitting in Jerusalem, I'm going to get this right here, to your east is the Dead Sea. That's one sea. Of course, to us we would call it a lake, but they call it the Dead Sea. That's one sea. To their west is the Great Sea, the Mediterranean Sea. And it's spoken of that way. So when it says here to a Jew writing this, when it says, they shall cry aloud from the sea, that's the Great Sea, that's the Mediterranean. From the area, and the Mediterranean is a huge sea. There are, dozens of countries around the Mediterranean. It says, there will come a great cry of praise to the majesty of God during the tribulation. It's amazing. From the sea, the Mediterranean Sea in the west, therefore glorify the Lord in the dawning light. Well, the light dawns in the east. So the praise comes from the west, it comes from the east, and the name of the Lord God of Israel in the coastlands of the sea. All the coasts surrounding the Mediterranean. Right? And then it gets bigger than that. From the ends of the earth we have heard the songs, glory to the righteous. This is interesting. The righteous are going to inherit glory. Glory to the righteous. So there's this praise going to God. There's this praise for those who have become righteous who will receive His glory in the midst of this terrifying scene. And Isaiah puts them both together. I'm sure he scratches his head how these two things are going to happen at the same time. But that's exactly what he said. Let's go on from there. Now, I only read you half of 16. It gets interesting when you read the whole verse. From the ends of the earth we have heard songs. glory to the righteous. But I said, I am ruined. Ruined. Woe to me. Wait a minute. He's just talking about people all the earth praising him. He says, whoa. Because wonderful things are happening and terrible things are happening. And he's responding to both of them. The treacherous dealers have dealt treacherously. Indeed, the treacherous dealers have dealt very treacherously. And that verse, in different forms, the word treacherous is used 4 times. Now, when you see something used 4 times in one verse, it's very unusual. But it's so terrifying and so awful what's going on. He uses the word treacherous. People are being dealt with worse than animals, if you will. Rounded up and slaughtered because they will not submit to this Antichrist system. Fear and the pit and the snare are upon you, O inhabitant of the earth, because of the treachery of this Antichrist system and what it is doing, murdering millions, hundreds of millions and more of people who've come to Christ. Judgment, the snare is upon you, O inhabitants of the earth. Fear and the pit is coming to you. And it reminds me, there's one, where else in the Bible I've seen a word used 4 times? And it's in Jude. Jude is Jesus' younger brother, half-brother, and he's talking about the final tribulation. Watch how he uses it. Now Enoch, the 7th from Adam, prophesied about these men also, saying, behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his saints. Oh, this is the return of Christ. Yes, it is. To execute judgment on all. This is the end of the tribulation. To convict all who are ungodly among them of their ungodly deeds, which they have committed in ungodly ways, and all of the harsh things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. The word ungodly is used 4 times there. In Isaiah, the word treacherous or treacherously is used 4 times. They're talking about the same period of time. A time of, how would I say, we've never seen such treachery. We've never seen such ungodliness. Yet the revival will be glorious. And from all over the world, people will find Christ and will praise him. The book of Revelation, they will wash their robes in the blood of the Lamb. Now, we see this praise going on in Isaiah 25. Praise the Lord. Oh Lord, you are my God. I will exalt you. I will praise your name, for you have done wonderful things. Your counsels of old are faithful and true. For you have made a city a ruin. We know this city. They're praising God for the destruction of Babylon. If they're believers, and they've come to believe during the tribulation period, when Babylon goes down, they're going to have a party. They have been slaughtered and murdered and chased and hounded and starved to death by the rulers of Babylon, and now Babylon is wiped out in a day, and there will be praise to God for it. For you have made a city of ruin, a fortified city of ruin, a palace of foreigners to be a city no more. It will never be rebuilt. Isaiah has already said this about Babylon, never going to be rebuilt. Therefore the strong people will glorify you, strong with God's strength. The people of the terrible nations will fear you. Amazing. Now, we mentioned this revival going on during the tribulation period. I'm getting close to the end of what I want to speak about in this session, but I'll give you some of the reasons why so many will come to Christ. I believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. We've looked at it, talked about it. So when Christians all over the planet disappear suddenly in a moment of time, many will know that our God is the God of the Bible. And they will begin to look for that rapture in the Scriptures and find it and realize what a Christian is and why we went up and why they're left behind. This is going to bring many to the knowledge of Christ. The failed Ezekiel 37-38 invasion, I believe led by Russia, or what will be Russia at that time, the great kingdom from the north, will lead this invasion and be totally wiped out, absolutely to a soldier destroyed. The great earthquake that happens there, meteors that hit this army, when they're wiped out, people are going to know that a Bible verse, a Bible prophecy came true before their eyes, and that this book is inspired by God. This will turn people to Christ. Then there are 444,000 Jewish evangelists preaching during the tribulation period in Revelation 14. We see them 2 places, and they don't seem to be diminished in numbers. which means they're under divine protection. They will be able to go all over the world and preach the gospel. They will win many. And then we see 2 fire-breathing prophets. Now, they don't just breathe fire for fun. When someone attacks them, they return literally with fire out of their mouth to consume them. At some point, God will allow the Antichrist to kill them. But in the meantime, and they're going to reveal God in a terrifying way. It's in Revelation 11, 1 through 14. I've just given you 4 things that will turn many to Christ. And as I didn't really say here in this list, but remember, he's going to take away all the wine and the joy and the party and the singing and fun. And all the fun is gone. People will get, many will in desperation turn to God. Thank God for it. Now, it's going to be like something. It's going to like, the earth will be much like just before the flood. The earth was filled with violence before the flood in Genesis 6:11. During the tribulation period, the slaughter, the martyrdom of Christians will make it like the flood. Violence will fill this planet, and that will touch off judgment. And that day is the same in Isaiah 26:9b. For when your judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world will learn righteousness. When he's judging, many people will learn to believe on Christ and receive his imparted righteousness. They will learn righteousness when the judgments happen. So, after the destruction of the flood of Noah, God promised the land of Palestine to Abraham and his descendants. This is a foretaste of the millennial reign of Christ, where an enlarged Palestine permanently becomes the possessions of the Jews. Their kingdom will extend from the Euphrates River to the Nile. That will be the enlarged Israel. That's coming. Oh, we're going to stop there. Okay. I'm going to continue with this. I'd like to do one more on this. I'm not always verse by verse. But Isaiah, his prophetic ability to see into the future, a time of terrifying wrath, and so many glorious salvations. The Great Tribulation is amazing. Amen. God bless you. Hope you with us with our final version coming up, or final episode.